It started with a little girl asking for school shoes, not money. A billionaire heard a promise no child should make. One quiet yes turned into waiting, healing, and staying. In a city that never slows down, 3 hearts learned what family really means when kindness finally refuses to leave. The glass doors of the Seaport Tower slid shut behind Silas Vance, sealing off another afternoon of charts, projections, and polite lies. 39 years old, a billionaire on paper, and somehow still empty. The autumn wind brushed his face as he adjusted his tie too tight, like everything else in his life. He checked his watch. 3:42 p.m., too early to go home, too late to pretend work mattered. Silas chose to walk. The street was alive with movement, heels on pavement, car horns, fragments of conversations drifting by. People passed him without seeing him. He was used to that. He preferred it that way. Then he heard laughter. Not loud, not cruel, just uncomfortable. Silas slowed. Near the entrance of a small shoe store stood a little girl, no more than 6 years old. She wasn't crying. She wasn't arguing. She was simply standing still, hands folded neatly in front of her, as if she were waiting for permission to exist. Her shoes caught his attention. They had once been white. Now they were gray with wear, the edges soft and thinning. One lace was missing. The soles looked tired, like they'd walked far longer than they should have. The girl noticed Silas looking. She straightened her posture. "I'm sorry," she said softly before he could speak. Her voice wasn't scared. It was practiced. "I'll move." Silas frowned. "Move why?" She glanced at the store window, then at her shoes. "They don't look very nice," she said. "I don't want to bother anyone." Something tightened in Silas's chest. The city noise faded just a little, as if the sidewalk itself had paused to listen. "What's your name?" he asked gently. The girl hesitated, then answered Wren. And for reasons Silas couldn't explain, that small, steady voice felt louder than any boardroom he'd ever ruled. Wren stood exactly where she was, not stepping closer, not stepping away. Silas noticed that first. Most people leaned in when they wanted something. She didn't. "I'm not asking for money," she said quickly, as if correcting a mistake he hadn't made yet. Her fingers curled into the sleeves of her jacket, thin but clean. Silas lowered himself slightly, meeting her at eye level. He made sure to keep his distance. "Okay," he said. "What are you asking for?" Wren swallowed. "I just need school shoes." She said it plainly. No drama, no exaggeration. "My teacher says shoes help you focus," she continued. "And kids notice things." A pause. "Especially shoes." Silas followed her gaze to the reflection in the glass. He saw what she saw, a small girl standing next to a world built for people much bigger, much louder, much richer. "When school ends, I wait for my mom," Wren added. "She works nearby. She's trying really hard." Silas nodded. "I believe that." She relaxed a little. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "I can pay you back?" Wren said, lifting her chin. "When I grow up?" Silas felt the air leave his lungs. "No one told you to say that, did they?" he asked carefully. She shook her head. "No, sir. It's just fair." Fair. He looked around. Adults hurried past. No one stopped. No one asked her name. Silas said slowly, "How about we go inside and just look, no promises?" Her eyes widened, not with greed, but with caution. "Just looking is okay," she agreed. "That way, no one gets sad." Silas removed his coat and gently draped it over her shoulders. Not to save her, just to keep the wind away. And together, without touching, they stepped toward the door. The shoe store smelled like new leather and quiet hope. Wren walked carefully between the shelves, her steps small, deliberate. She didn't touch anything until Silas nodded that it was okay. The clerk smiled politely, asked her size, and knelt down with professional ease. Ren followed every instruction, trying not to take up too much space. She tried on the first pair. Too stiff. The second pair. Too tight. She shook her head each time, apologizing under her breath. Then the clerk brought out a simple pair, white with soft pink stitching along the sides. Ren slipped them on. She stood up slowly. Then she took one step. Then another. Her face didn't change right away. She just stood there feeling. After a long moment, she whispered, "It doesn't hurt." 4 words. Quiet. Devastating. Silas turned away, pretending to examine a shelf. "We'll take those," he said quickly. The clerk nodded, already moving. As the purchase was completed, Ren approached Silas, holding her old shoes carefully in her hands. "Can we keep these?" she asked. They tried their best. Silas swallowed. Of course. Outside, Ren took a few steps on the sidewalk, then spun once, careful not to draw attention. "Thank you," she said. "My mom's going to smile." She paused, then added, "I won't forget this." Silas smiled, not trusting his voice. By the time he looked up again, Ren was already running toward a woman across the street, her coat flapping, her new shoes steady beneath her. Silas stood there alone. For the first time in years, his chest felt full, not with pride, not with success, but with something far more dangerous. Hope. The clerk slid the small paper bag across the counter. Inside it were the old shoes, creased, tired, but neatly wrapped. Ren watched them as if they were something precious. "They worked really hard," she said quietly. "Even when they hurt." Silas nodded. He didn't trust himself to speak yet. Outside, the city felt louder than before. Cars rushed by. A bus hissed as it stopped. Life continued careless and fast. Ren stepped onto the sidewalk and took another cautious step, then another. Her shoulders relaxed. "They feel different," she said. "Like they're listening to my feet." Silas smiled despite himself. "Shoes should listen," he replied. "That's their job." Ren laughed, a small sound, surprised by its own existence. She spun once, then stopped abruptly, checking herself. "Sorry," she said. "I forgot." Forgot what Silas asked. That I'm supposed to be quiet. The words landed heavier than she intended. Silas crouched again, careful, calm. "You don't have to be quiet with me." Ren looked at him, studying his face, as if deciding whether to believe him. Across the street, a woman stood near the laundromat doors, glancing at her watch. Her hair was pulled back tightly, her posture alert, protective. "My mom," Ren said. "I should go." She took 2 steps, then stopped and turned back. "I'll pay you back," she said firmly. "When I'm big." Silas shook his head gently. "You don't owe me anything." Ren frowned. "Everyone owes someone something." Silas paused. Then he answered truthfully. "Then someday when you can help someone else, that's enough for me." Ren considered this. Then she nodded, satisfied. She stepped forward and hugged his leg, brief, respectful light as a question mark. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered. Before he could respond, she ran to her mother. Silas watched as the woman knelt, inspected the shoes, and pulled Ren into a tight embrace. He saw the relief, the gratitude, the quiet exhaustion. When they disappeared into the laundromat, Silas remained on the sidewalk. The bag with the old shoes felt heavier in his hand than it should have. Silas returned to his office, but the glass walls no longer felt invisible. During meetings, numbers blurred. His pen hovered over notepads without touching them. At night, his apartment felt larger, too clean, too quiet. He kept thinking about one thing. Not the shoes, not the money, the promise. When I'm big. 3 days later, he walked that same block again. He told himself it was coincidence. The 4th day, he admitted it wasn't. The 5th day, he slowed his steps near the shoe store, scanning faces he didn't recognize. On the 7th day, he saw her. Ren sat on a wooden bench near the laundromat, feet swinging above the ground. A book rested open on her lap. Her backpack sky blue patched at the seams leaned beside her. Her shoes were spotless. Silas stopped several feet away. She looked up. Her face changed instantly, not with need, but with recognition. "You came back," she said, as if confirming a theory. Silas smiled. "I guess I did." She hopped down from the bench, careful not to scuff her shoes. "I clean them every day," she said proudly. "That way they don't forget they're important." "That's very responsible," Silas replied. "No one laughs anymore," Wren added. "They still look, but different." Silas felt a familiar tightening in his chest. "Do you feel different?" She nodded. A little taller. He noticed the time. Nearly 5. "Are you waiting for your mom?" he asked. "Yes, sir. She finishes at 6. She shrugged as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "I wait." Silas sat down on the far end of the bench. "Would you like to wait somewhere warmer?" he asked carefully. "Only if it's okay." Wren thought about it. "Did you bring paper?" she asked. "For what, in case my mom wants to know where I went?" Silas reached into his jacket and pulled out a pen and notepad. Wren smiled. "Then yes," she said. "I'd like that." The laundromat doors swung open with a rush of warm air and soap. Inside, Maris Calloway folded towels with fast, practiced movements. Her face looked tired, but alert eyes trained to notice anything out of place. Mom, Wren called. Maris turned, relief crossing her face before she noticed Silas standing near the door. Her body shifted instantly, subtle, protective. "This is the man I told you about," Wren said brightly. "The shoe man." Maris approached her, smile polite but cautious. "Thank you," she said to Silas. "Wren hasn't stopped talking about the shoes." "It was my pleasure," Silas replied. He kept his hands visible, his tone calm. "I wanted to ask before taking her anywhere. Just to look. Public places only." Maris studied him closely. Wren sensed the tension and spoke quickly. "He brought paper," she said, holding up the note. "So you wouldn't worry." Maris read the note, then looked back at Silas. "You didn't have to do any of this," she said. "I wanted to," he answered. "And I promise I'll bring her back before 6. Maris hesitated. The decision showed on her face the weight of trust, the fear of mistakes. 10 minutes, she said finally. "Across the street, I'll be watching." Wren beamed. Outside as they crossed, Silas felt the gravity of the moment. This wasn't charity. This was permission. In the store window across the street, backpacks lined the wall like possibilities. Wren pressed her face lightly to the glass. "I don't need one," she said quickly. "I just like to look." Silas nodded. "Looking is allowed," he said. "Dreaming too." Behind them, through the laundromat window, Maris watched, arms crossed, eyes sharp. But something in her expression softened. Because for the first time in a long while, her daughter wasn't waiting alone. The backpack store was small but bright, its window filled with color. Wren stood inches from the glass, hands clasped behind her back, rocking slightly on her heels. Her reflection mixed with rows of backpacks, red, green, patterned loud. She didn't touch the door. Silas noticed that too. "They're all very loud," Wren said thoughtfully. "But some are loud in a nice way." Silas smiled. "Which one is loud in a nice way?" She pointed, not directly, just a small tilt of her chin. "A sky blue backpack dotted with tiny silver stars. That one looks like it knows secrets," she said. "Like it wouldn't tell anyone if I was scared." Silas opened the door and stepped aside. Wren hesitated. "Just looking," she reminded him. "Just looking," Silas agreed. Inside, the store smelled like fabric and possibility. The clerk nodded politely but didn't rush them. Wren walked slowly, reverently, as if the backpacks were sleeping animals. She stopped in front of the blue one. Up close it was simple. Strong stitching. Reinforced straps. She touched it with one finger. "It looks heavy," she said. "Strong things usually are," Silas replied. She tried it on, adjusting the straps herself. Then she stood very still. "It fits," she said, surprised. I didn't know things could fit without hurting. Silas felt that familiar pressure in his chest. As the clerk rang it up, Wren turned to Silas, serious now. Why are you doing this? She asked. He considered the question carefully. Because when I was little, he said slowly, I thought being grown up meant never needing anyone. I was wrong. Wren studied his face, and now she asked, Now I think being grown up means noticing. She nodded, satisfied. Outside, Wren hugged the backpack to her chest, careful not to dirty it. Across the street, through the glass, Maris watched, and for the first time she didn't look afraid. They returned Wren to the laundromat exactly on time. Maris was waiting near the door, arms folded not in anger, but in habit. Wren ran to her, holding up the backpack. Mom, look, she said. It has stars. Maris smiled instinctively. Then she noticed Silas. The smile softened but didn't disappear. It's beautiful, she said to Wren, brushing hair from her daughter's face. Then to Silas, quieter. You didn't need to do that. I wanted to, Silas replied. But if it makes you uncomfortable, it's not that, Maris said quickly. It's just... She searched for the right words. I don't want her thinking things are given for nothing. Wren looked between them. It's a loan, she said firmly. I told him. Maris blinked. A loan, yes, Wren nodded. When I grow up. Silas smiled gently. She's very persuasive. Maris sighed, rubbing her temple. Then she looked directly at Silas. I appreciate your kindness, she said. Truly. But I have rules. I respect that, Silas answered. No surprises, no secrets, and no promises you can't keep. Silas nodded. Agreed. Maris studied him for another long moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small slip of paper. If you want to help, she said. Handing it to him, we're going to the uniform store on Saturday, 10 a.m. Maple Street. Silas accepted the paper like a contract. I'll be there, he said. Wren squeezed her mother's hand. As they walked away, Wren turned once more. Thank you for noticing, she called. Silas stood alone again, but this time he wasn't empty. He was waiting. 3 months passed. Silas's calendar changed in ways no assistant could explain. Tuesdays and Thursdays ended earlier. Saturdays belonged somewhere else. His apartment, once pristine, now held drawings on the fridge and crumbs on the counter. He didn't mind. Then the phone rang. Mr. Vance. The voice was calm but concerned. This is Mrs. Hart, Wren's teacher. Silas straightened. Is she okay? She's safe, Mrs. Hart said quickly. But she's very upset. There was a conversation in class today. About families. Silas closed his eyes. One of the children made a comment. Miss Hart continued carefully. Nothing violent, but it hurt her feelings. Silas's jaw tightened. Her mother is working and listed you as emergency contact, Ms. Hart added. Would you be able to come? I'm on my way, Silas said, already grabbing his coat. The school hallway smelled like crayons and disinfectant. Wren sat on a small chair outside the classroom, backpack clutched to her chest like armor. She didn't cry when she saw him. That was worse. They said I was different, she said quietly. Not bad, just missing something. Silas knelt beside her. And what do you think? He asked. She hesitated, then barely above a whisper. I think maybe you'll leave when you realize I'm not your responsibility. The words cut deeper than any accusation. Silas took a breath. I don't stay because I have to, he said gently. I stay because I choose to. Wren looked up at him. Every time she asked. Every time he promised. And for the first time that day, Wren leaned into him. Not as a child who needed saving, but as one who trusted she already was. Silas began to notice the pattern long before anyone said the word sick. It was the way Maris paused halfway up the stairs. The way she smiled a second longer than necessary, as if buying time for her breath. The way she waved off concern with practiced ease. "I'm fine," she always said, and Silas wanted to believe her. One Thursday afternoon, Wren sat at the kitchen table coloring while Maris folded laundry nearby. The room was warm, quiet, safe. Everything looked normal. Then Maris coughed. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to make Silas look up. She turned away instinctively, pressing a hand to her mouth. When she turned back, her smile was already in place. "Dry air," she said. "Nothing serious." Wren looked up from her drawing. "Mom," she said carefully, "you promised you'd rest today." Maris laughed softly. "I am resting." Silas said nothing, but he remembered. The laundromat, the chemical smell, the years. Later that evening, as Silas walked Wren to the door, Maris thanked him for dinner and for staying late. "You don't have to rearrange your life for us," she said, almost apologetically. "I'm not rearranging," Silas replied. "I'm choosing." She met his eyes. For a moment, her guard slipped. "Just don't start worrying," she said quietly. "We've been okay for a long time." That night, Silas couldn't sleep. He sat on his balcony, city lights blurring into distant constellations. He thought of Wren's backpack with stars, of promises children shouldn't have to make, and of a mother who had learned how to survive by minimizing herself. The next morning, his phone rang. It was the laundromat manager. "Mr. Vance," the woman said, tense but professional. "Maris fainted at work. She's awake, but we called an ambulance to be safe." Silas didn't hesitate. "I'm coming," he said. And as he hung up, he realized something frightening. This wasn't about kindness anymore. This was about responsibility. The hospital waiting room was too bright. Wren sat quietly beside Silas' feet, not touching the floor, her backpack zipped tight on her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. That scared him more than anything. "She just needs rest," Wren said softly, repeating words she'd heard too many times. "Mom always gets better." Silas nodded, though his chest felt heavy. When Dr. Keene finally approached, his expression was calm, professional. "Mrs. Calloway is stable," he said. "She insisted we speak with you." Silas followed him a few steps away, keeping Wren within sight. "Maris has a chronic lung condition," the doctor explained. "Likely aggravated by long-term exposure to cleaning chemicals. It's manageable, but only if she changes environments." Silas exhaled slowly. "She didn't want to stop working," Dr. Keene added. "Single parents rarely do." When Silas was allowed in, Maris sat upright in bed, pale but alert. She tried to smile. "I'm sorry you had to come," she said. "This isn't how I wanted you to find out." "You don't need to apologize," Silas replied gently. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked away. "Because being strong is how I keep things together." Wren entered then, holding Silas's hand. "Mom," she said, voice steady, "I waited like you taught me." Maris's eyes filled instantly. "I'm okay," she promised her daughter. Silas said nothing, but later in the hallway, he made a decision. He returned to the room and spoke carefully, respectfully. "I have an opening at my company," he said. "Administrative work, clean air, regular hours, real pay." Maris shook her head. "I don't take charity." "This isn't charity," Silas replied. "It's a job, and you're qualified." Silence stretched. Wren looked between them. "Mom," she said softly, "you said it's okay to accept help if it helps us stay together." Maris closed her eyes, and for the first time she nodded. Maris started 2 weeks later. She wore a simple blue blouse and slacks, clothes chosen carefully not to impress, but to belong. Silas watched her step into the office building, shoulders squared, nervous and proud all at once. Wren waited with him in the lobby, coloring quietly. "Is this where you work?" she asked. Silas nodded. "Most days." She looked around. "It's very shiny." "It used to be lonely," he said honestly. "Now it's better." Maris adjusted quickly, too quickly. She organized files that had been ignored for years. She learned systems without complaint. People noticed. You hired the right person, Silas's assistant said one afternoon. I know, he replied. At home, things changed too. Dinner happened earlier. Laughter came easier. Wren slept better. One night, as Silas prepared to leave, Wren asked her usual question. Will you be here when I wake up? Silas knelt in front of her. Not every morning, he said honestly. But I'll always come back. She considered this. That's okay, she said. Coming back is the important part. Later, Maris walked Silas to the door. You didn't save us, she said quietly. You stood with us. Silas nodded. You did the hard part. She hesitated, then placed a small object in his hand. It was Wren's first drawing, the one of them holding hands. We thought you should keep it, Maris said. Silas closed his fingers around the paper. For the first time in his life, he wasn't choosing between success and love. He had learned something far more difficult: how to choose both without losing himself. The apartment felt different that evening. Not quieter, just fuller. Dinner dishes soaked in the sink. Wren's laughter still lingered in the air, echoing faintly from the hallway as she brushed her teeth. Silas stood in the living room, sleeves rolled up, feeling oddly at ease in a space that wasn't his. Make yourself comfortable, Maris said from the kitchen. You're allowed to sit, Silas smiled. I don't remember the last time someone told me that. He lowered himself onto the couch. The cushions were worn but warm. On the wall were framed drawings, crayon suns, uneven houses, stick figures holding hands. Proof of a life in progress. As he looked around, something caught his eye. A small bookshelf near the window. A framed photograph half hidden behind a potted plant. Two young women stood in the picture, arms around each other, smiling, wide and fearless. College-aged, wind in their hair. The world still open. Silas leaned closer. His breath caught. Maris, he said slowly. Who is this? She dried her hands and walked over. When she saw the photo, her expression softened. That's my mom, she said, pointing to the woman on the left, and her best friend from college. Silas stared at the other face. Dark hair, light eyes, a familiar smile. That's my mother, he whispered. The room seemed to tilt. Maris looked at him sharply. What my mom's name was? Elizabeth Vance, Silas said. She went to school here. She never talked much about that time. Maris sat down heavily. My mom was Catherine Calloway, she said. They lost touch after graduation. They stared at the photo together, the past suddenly breathing between them. Wren padded into the room, toothbrush in hand. Why are you both so quiet? She asked. Maris pulled her close. Sweetheart, this is your grandmother. And this, she gestured toward Silas. This is the woman who raised him. Wren's eyes widened. So, they were friends first, she asked. Silas nodded. Wren smiled slowly, as if a puzzle had clicked into place. Then we're not random, she declared. We were just late. Silas laughed, a real laugh, surprised and unguarded. Later that night, after Wren fell asleep, Silas and Maris sat at the table with a box of old letters. Yellowed envelopes, familiar handwriting, proof that two women decades ago had loved and trusted each other. And somehow, without knowing it, had built a bridge their children would one day cross. The following weeks moved gently, but something underneath had shifted. Maris looked healthier. Her color returned. But strength, Silas learned, had a cost. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows, Silas found Maris sitting alone at the table, shoulders slumped. You okay? He asked. She hesitated, then nodded, then shook her head. I don't know how to stop being the one who holds everything up, she admitted. I don't know who I am if I rest. Silas sat across from her. You don't disappear when you rest, he said. You just let someone else stand beside you. Maris looked at him, really looked. You're still choosing us, she said quietly. Yes, Silas answered. Every day. The next morning, he arrived early at the office. He canceled a meeting, then another. That afternoon, the doctor called. Maris's condition was improving, but slowly. Stress mattered. Pace mattered. Silas made another choice. He asked Maris to reduce her hours. She resisted. "I can't afford you can," he said firmly but gently. "And you don't have to prove anything anymore." That night, Ren noticed the difference. "You're breathing better," she said to her mom. Maris smiled. "I think I am." Ren turned to Silas. "Is this what grown-ups do?" she asked. "Help each other stop hurting?" Silas nodded. "The good ones do." Later, after Ren went to bed, Maris stood by the window watching the city lights. "I spent so long making sure she didn't feel the absence of a father," she said. "I didn't realize I was denying myself the chance to be seen." Silas stood beside her. "You never denied her love," he said. "You just carried it alone." She reached for his hand. This time he didn't pull away. They stood like that, silent and steady. Two adults who had survived different kinds of loneliness, choosing not to anymore. It was a Sunday morning when Ren asked the question. They were at the table, pancakes, half-eaten syrup sticky on fingers. The apartment smelled like coffee and something close to peace. Silas Ren said suddenly, "Yes, Starshine." She tilted her head. "Are you leaving?" The room froze. Maris looked up sharply. Ren Silas raised a hand gently. "It's okay." He turned to Ren. "Why would you think that?" She shrugged. "People leave when things get better, like they did their part." Silas felt something crack inside him. He knelt beside her chair. "Ren," he said carefully, "I didn't come here to fix something and walk away." Then why, she asked. He thought about the photo, the letters, the drawing in his wallet. "Because this is my life now," he said simply. Ren studied his face for a long moment. "Then can I tell people you're my family?" she asked. Silas didn't answer right away. Maris held her breath. "Yes," he said, "if you want to." Ren smiled, then did something unexpected. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded paper. "I've been saving this," she said, handing it to him. It was a new drawing, 3 figures this time, holding hands, a house behind them, stars above, underneath in careful letters, "The people who stay." Silas closed his eyes. Maris covered her mouth. "You don't have to be perfect," Ren added. "Just stay." Silas nodded, voice thick. "I can do that." That night, as Silas lay on the couch listening to the quiet rhythm of the apartment, he realized something undeniable. He wasn't visiting anymore. He was home. Silas didn't move in all at once. It happened the way real things happen, quietly, in small choices that became permanent, before anyone dared to name them. One evening, he arrived with a paper bag of fresh rolls from the corner bakery and a small carton of strawberries because Ren had announced very seriously that strawberries help the brain do brave things. Maris laughed at that, the kind of laugh that didn't sound tired anymore. They ate dinner at the little table, 3 plates, 3 forks, a candle, that Ren insisted made the room feel like a movie. Afterward, Maris washed dishes while Silas dried them, both of them, moving in a rhythm that felt strangely familiar, like a song he'd known before he forgot how to hear it. Ren sat cross-legged on the couch, flipping through her science notebook. Her pencil tapped the page as she thought. "Silas," she said suddenly without looking up. "Yes, Starshine, do you have a bedtime?" Silas blinked. "I guess I used to." Ren nodded like that explained everything. "That's why you look confused sometimes. People need bedtimes." Maris hid a smile behind a dish towel. "She's not wrong." Silas leaned closer to Ren's notebook. "What are you drawing now?" Lungs, Ren said very quietly. Then just as quietly she added, "So I can understand how to help Mom stay strong." Maris's hands stilled. Silas didn't let the moment collapse into fear. He kept his voice gentle, steady, safe. "That's a beautiful reason," he said. "But your job is to be 6." Ren looked up, serious. I am 6, she said. I just… Notice. That word again. Notice. After Ren went to brush her teeth, Maris and Silas stepped onto the small balcony. The city lights flickered below like distant stars trying their best. Maris wrapped her arms around herself, not from cold, but from the habit of holding herself together. I've been thinking, she said. Silas waited. I don't want her to feel like you're a guest who might disappear, Maris continued, voice careful. And I don't want you to feel like you're borrowing a life that isn't yours. Silas swallowed. I don't want to borrow it, he admitted. I want to be part of it. Maris's eyes shone, controlled, dignified. Then we need to do this the right way. He nodded. Tell me what right looks like. Maris exhaled, relieved by the question. Boundaries, she said. Honesty, no rushing. And Ren's stability comes first. Always, always, Silas echoed. Maris reached into a drawer by the balcony door and pulled out a small envelope. She held it between 2 fingers like it weighed 100 pounds. A key, she said, almost whispering. Not because you need access, because Ren needs certainty. And because I do too. Silas stared at the envelope. In his life, he had accepted keys to penthouses, private lounges, members-only clubs. None of them had ever felt like this. You're sure, he asked. Maris's voice trembled only slightly. I'm not giving you a cage, Silas. I'm giving you a choice. He took the envelope carefully. Then I choose, he said. I choose you. A soft sound came from the hallway. Ren, in pajamas with tiny stars, stood there rubbing her eyes. Are you whispering? She asked, suspicious. Maris smiled. Grown-up talk. Ren stepped closer, peered at the envelope in Silas's hand, then looked at their faces like a tiny detective. Oh, she said. It's a stay thing. Silas laughed, stunned. Ren nodded as if confirming a scientific hypothesis. Good, she said. Because I don't like goodbyes. Silas crouched so she could see his eyes clearly. No surprise goodbyes, he promised. No disappearing. Ren studied him for a long, serious moment. Okay, she said, then yawned. Then I can sleep. When she finally went back to bed, Silas held the key in his palm. It was small, but it sounded like a door unlocking somewhere deep inside him. 2 weeks later, Silas stood in the center of his luxury apartment and realized it didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a showroom designed for a person who never actually lived. The floors were spotless, the furniture expensive, the walls decorated with art he couldn't remember choosing. Everything was quiet in a way that didn't soothe the accused. He walked to the nightstand and opened the drawer. Inside was Ren's first drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands under a giant red heart. The paper was slightly wrinkled, now softened by being folded and unfolded too many times. He held it up against the city skyline beyond the glass window. The contrast was almost cruel. One world built on height and distance, the other built on warmth and staying. Silas exhaled and picked up his phone. Claire, he said when his assistant answered. Yes, Mr. Vance, I'm going to need to reschedule the real estate meeting, he said. A pause. The meeting about your property. Yes, Silas replied. I'm putting it on the market. Silence then, a careful, professional tone. Understood. Do you want me to ask why? Silas smiled. No, he said. But thank you for knowing that you could. That evening he arrived at Maris's apartment with a single suitcase. Not dramatic, not heavy. Just enough to signal that something had shifted. Ren opened the door before Maris could. Her eyes immediately dropped to the suitcase. Her face lit up, but she tried to play it cool. Oh, she said, nodding slowly. You brought your bedtime. Silas laughed. Something like that. Maris stepped forward and for a moment vulnerability flickered across her face. Are we doing this? She asked softly. We're doing it carefully, Silas replied. One day at a time. Wren cleared her throat like she was about to deliver an announcement. I have rules, she said. Maris raised an eyebrow. You do, yes. Wren said, counting on her fingers. 1, Silas has to eat vegetables. 2, he has to stop saying I'm fine when he's tired. 3, he has to be here for Pancake Sunday. Silas pressed a hand to his chest. Those are serious rules. Wren nodded. I'm serious. Maris hid her smile, but her eyes softened. Later, while Wren colored at the table, Maris pulled Silas aside in the kitchen. Are you sure you're ready for what this means? She asked. People will talk. Your world is not kind. Silas leaned against the counter. My world is polite, he said. Not kind. There's a difference. Maris's voice lowered. I won't have Wren turned into a story people whisper about. Silas's face became still. Neither will I, he said firmly. We control our narrative. We keep her protected. We keep her life normal. Maris searched his eyes for any hint of ego. Found none. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for months. Okay, she whispered. That night, after Wren fell asleep, Silas lay on the couch again, not because he wasn't welcome, but because he wanted to ease in gently, like stepping into warm water. Maris sat on the floor near the coffee table, sorting Wren's school papers. Silas watched her for a long moment. You're quieter when she's asleep, he said. Maris smiled faintly. When she's awake, I'm performing steady. When she's asleep, I'm just me. Silas nodded. I know that feeling. Maris looked up. You're not scared, Silas's throat tightened. I am, he admitted. But not of you. Not of Wren. I'm scared of losing what I didn't know I needed. Maris reached out and placed her hand over his simple grounding. You won't lose us, she said. Not if you keep choosing us. Silas closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the quiet didn't echo. It held him. The next morning, Silas woke to the sound of something small and purposeful happening in the kitchen. He opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling for a second, disoriented. The couch was not comfortable, and yet, he had slept better than he ever had in his king-sized bed. He sat up. Wren stood on a chair by the counter, carefully placing paper plates on a tray. Maris hovered nearby, supervising the way responsible adults do, close enough to protect, far enough to let confidence grow. Wren gasped when she saw Silas. You're awake, Silas rubbed his eyes. It appears I am. Wren pointed dramatically at the tray. Breakfast, she announced, because you stayed. Silas's chest tightened. Maris stepped closer, her expression soft but wary. She insisted, she said. I told her pancakes are a weekend thing. Wren lifted her chin. It's a special day. Silas smiled. What makes it special? Wren glanced toward Maris, then back at him. Her voice lowered, suddenly fragile. Because when I woke up, she whispered you were still here. Silas stood very still, careful not to overwhelm the moment. Maris's eyes shimmered. The three of them ate at the small table: toast, scrambled eggs, fruit. Nothing fancy. Everything real. After breakfast, Maris gathered courage the way she always did, quietly from somewhere deep. Silas, she said, we should talk about logistics. Wren groaned. Grown-up talk again. Maris smiled gently. Wren, go pick a book for reading time. Wren hopped down but stopped at the doorway. Just so you know, she said to Silas, I'm not letting you leave without a goodbye. Silas's face softened. That's fair, he said. When Wren disappeared into her room, Maris turned back to Silas. I don't want her to think love is something you earn by being perfect, Maris said. And I don't want her to think stability depends on money. Silas nodded. Agreed. Maris's hands trembled slightly as she spoke. Then we need a plan. Not a fantasy. A plan that keeps her safe, keeps her routine steady, keeps her heart protected. Silas took a breath. Then we do it like we do everything now, he said. Slow, clear, honest. Maris's voice cracked. "You've never lived like this," she said. "With a child's schedule and school forms and little socks in the laundry?" Silas smiled. "I'm learning, and I like it." Maris watched him carefully, while Silas looked toward Wren's room where soft page-turning sounds drifted out. "Because my whole life," he said, "I've been in rooms full of people who clapped for results. And then I went home to silence." He swallowed. "Here," he continued, "I'm not admired. I'm needed. And not in a transactional way. In a human way." Maris's eyes filled. Silas's voice grew quieter. "I don't want to be a visitor, Maris. I don't want to be an occasional kindness. I want to be consistent." Maris whispered. "Consistency is what she's never had." Silas nodded. "Then let me be it. Let me show her what staying looks like." Maris stood there, the strongest person in the room and yet the most vulnerable. Then she said the word that changed everything. Stay. Not as a demand, not as a trap, as an invitation. Silas's voice came out thick. "Okay," he said. "I'll stay." Wren appeared in the doorway like she'd been waiting for the exact second to re-enter the scene. She held up a book with a triumphant grin. "Reading time," she announced, then paused, eyes flicking between them. "You said it," she whispered. Maris blinked, said what Wren's smile grew wider, tears bright in her eyes but not falling because she was safe. "The stay word," she said. "You said the stay word." Silas crouched and opened his arms. Wren ran into him, and Maris joined them a beat later, wrapping her arms around both. A quiet group hug. No fireworks, no speeches, just three hearts finding the same rhythm. And in that small apartment, with sunlight spilling across a table that didn't match the chairs, Silas Vance finally understood. Some families are built. Some families are chosen. And the best ones are the ones that stay. Life didn't change overnight. It changed in lists. School drop-offs on Tuesdays. Homework at the small table by the window. Doctor appointments marked in blue ink. Pancake Sundays written in Wren's careful handwriting. Silas learned the rhythm quickly, not because it was easy, but because it mattered. He learned how to pack lunches without overthinking them. He learned that Wren preferred apples sliced, not whole. He learned that Maris needed quiet mornings and honest evenings. Most of all, he learned that presence was louder than promises. At work, Silas delegated more. Meetings ended earlier. His calendar finally reflected his priorities. People noticed, but no one questioned him. There was a steadiness in his voice now that required no explanation. Wren noticed, too. One afternoon, as Silas helped her with a science worksheet, she looked up and said, "You don't rush anymore." He paused. "Is that good?" She nodded. "It makes things feel safe." Maris watched from the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug, breathing easier than she had in years. That night, as Silas tucked Wren into bed, she asked her familiar question. "Will you be here when I wake up?" Silas smiled. "Yes." Not because it was required, because it was true. Across the hall, Maris listened, leaning lightly against the doorframe. For the first time, routine didn't feel like survival. It felt like healing. The world eventually caught up. At school, Ms. Hart noticed the change in Wren, more confident, more willing to raise her hand. She smiled more easily now, laughed without checking who was watching. At work, Maris was promoted quietly without fanfare. Her lungs continued to improve. Her shoulders relaxed. One evening as they walked home from the park, Wren skipped ahead, backpack bouncing. "People think families look one way," she said thoughtfully, "but they don't." Silas nodded. "They look like care." Wren turned back, serious and staying. Maris reached for Silas's hand. This time there was no hesitation. Later that night, Silas received an invitation to a high-profile event, one he would have attended without question a year ago. He declined. Instead, he sat at the table helping Wren glue stars onto a poster for school. Maris watched him, eyes soft. You gave up a lot. Silas shook his head. I traded up. She smiled, the kind of smile that didn't ask for reassurance. Outside, the city kept moving, loud, ambitious, fast. Inside, something quieter held, and it was enough. A year later, Silas found the old paper bag in the back of a closet. Inside were the worn shoes, cleaned, preserved, respected. He brought them out to the living room. Wren, now taller, knelt beside him. Those are my first brave shoes, she said proudly. Maris smiled. We kept them. Why? Silas asked. Wren shrugged. So we don't forget. They framed the shoes and hung them beside the old drawing, the first one. 2 stick figures, a heart, a promise. That evening, as they sat together on the couch, Wren rested her head on Silas's shoulder. When I grow up, she said, I'll pay you back. Silas smiled. You already have. Maris leaned against him, warm and steady. Outside, the city lights shimmered. Inside, the world felt complete. It hadn't started with a grand gesture. It hadn't ended with applause. It had started with noticing, and it had ended with staying. Somewhere in the quiet of an ordinary night, Silas Vance understood the simplest truth of all. Success isn't what you build for yourself. It's what you protect for others. And sometimes it begins with a pair of shoes and becomes a family. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.